at every level it gets a little bit more sophisticated, and at the pro level it comes down to, coaching and methodology and mindset. There's so much more to it at each level. But yeah, it's a simple activity and one of the earliest sports man has ever done.
Welcome to the Cannonball Mindset, and today this is a real treat for me. I'm a coach. I'm a business coach, a lifestyle coach, and but I'm sitting with a coach who coaches like world-class athletes, and these are athletes that 3 years ago I was absolutely unaware of the amount of athletic ability it takes to do what you coach them to do. But I'm sitting with world-renowned Coach Brad Hudson, Hudson Elite Runners. I'm saying author, a father. Like what I'm saying, you got like a million.
I have 3 books.
Right?
Yeah.
3 books, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
We're here in Arizona, and you're working with your athletes now, getting them ready for. Some of them training up for the Olympics. Correct?
Yeah. Yep. Olympic trials in Atlanta and a few other races before the London Marathon.
That's awesome. So you are a world-class running coach. Is that what you call it? Endurance coach, running coach?
Yeah, running coach. I specialize in long distance running, 5K on up.
So I shouldn't say people. So I always had this mindset before I started running that you don't really need a coach to run. Like you just walk, like you just go outside and you just run, right? It's a
simple activity. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
just move one foot in front of the other.
One of the great things about it.
Yeah,
It's simple.
Simple,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
But this what I've found over the last couple of years with the amount of running I'm doing, that there's a lot more to it than just putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, and at every level it gets a little bit more sophisticated, and at the pro level it comes down to, coaching and methodology and mindset. There's so much more to it at each level. But yeah, it's a simple activity and one of the earliest sports man has ever done, or women.
Yeah, right. And so I want to get to. We're going to talk about running. This isn't going to be a podcast about running. So if you're listening, don't think I'm going to talk about forms of running. But what I really want to get to is your journey to become this coach, because I think one of the things I'm fascinated about athletes in general is who they surround themselves with, and what it takes to, regardless of the circumstance, whether it's running, whether it's business, whether it's life, whatever, submitting yourself to a coach, to somebody that's going to hold you accountable. So I want to talk about that, but first I want to talk about your progression in getting there. So you were a runner as a kid, right? I think I've read that you ran your first marathon when you were 12 years
Correct.
old.
Correct.
Right? So
yeah,
tell me
I was
about
running
that.
140 miles a week in high school and training very serious
What-
at a young age.
How did you know, when did you know, what was it? Was there a moment that you said, I just really love running? Is it?
Yeah, it happened, very young. I think when I was 11 or 12, I knew I was training with an adult training group and just got into running and just loved it. And I knew at a young age it's where I wanted to go.
So take me back to that first marathon. I think it was Gettysburg.
Correct.
Gettysburg
Yeah, wow, you
Marathon.
did your research.
And Gettysburg, I'm a huge Civil War
Okay.
guy.
Yeah. You know
I
about
live close.
It's where the South, big round top. Is it Gerald Meade?
Yep, General Meade.
Gerald Meade, that was their finest moment.
Yeah, held them off at the Battle of the Round Top. Had they won that, they would have. So
they couldn't penetrate the North.
They could not.
Yeah.
And so what's crazy about this is that I live close to Gettysburg. I'm 45 minutes from there, and that marathon is not a flat marathon.
No, it's a very hilly
marathon.
Yes,
right?
yeah, and I realized that when I got there. Big round top, little round top are not short little hills.
Yeah, so you're 12 years old. What are your parents thinking, first of all, at 12 years old? I have 14-year-old daughters. I took them this week to do a 5K with me. They're going to do a half with me at the end of the summer. And I can't imagine it. This is 2 years ago. They're 14 now. So 12. You were 12. You're going out to run a full marathon.
Yeah, so I was very self-motivated. They were supportive. They weren't runners themselves, but they were supportive of what I was doing. So they let me kind of do what I wanted to do. But it definitely came from me, if that makes sense. It wasn't like Little League parents like, hey, go run a marathon. It was like, I want to go run this marathon.
And so what's it like being Again, you came in fourth overall.
Yep.
Overall.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining. I look at the marathons I run, and I don't see any 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
And so you're this 12-year-old. You're running with these adults.
Correct.
And some probably that's a time qualifier for Boston.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
these are serious runners, and you
Yeah.
have this 12-year-old that's charging the mountain. Like,
Yep.
what's that like?
So I actually was disappointed with it. I was pretty self-motivated. I wanted to break the national record, and I missed it by like a minute or two. Forget exactly what the time was, but I missed it. And so I wasn't super psyched. I was just disappointed I didn't break the record, but it was still fun that I actually did a marathon at 12.
Yeah, listen, you don't remember the time. I remember the time. Your time was like
2:50.
2 hours and
Yeah, so 6:30 a mile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the idea that you're disappointed. And
Yeah.
If,
I was a strange kid.
listen, if I trained every day for a year, weight training, running training, eating right, I couldn't run 1 mile in 6 minutes. It would take me my whole life. And you had 12, you're running 26 at that time.
Yeah, there's some science that actually kids are their body weight to their size of their heart and stuff. I've talked to physicians about this, that it's a pretty not easy time, but it's a pretty good time to be a runner.
Yeah.
For them to be able to do it.
I think one of the great, like me, I'm really consider myself a runner now. I used to be somebody that ran, and now I consider myself a runner. And it's a big shift in my mindset. Looking at it, it's amazing what just shifting those words around can do. But one of the things I really enjoy is seeing my daughters out running at this age, and because it is something that leads to a lot of great things. I'm saying, we talked about before the podcast about, for me, it's moving meditation. But it keeps me healthy, it keeps me fit, and it's just relaxing for me. So I love my kids doing it. So you're 12, you're now running marathons.
Correct.
And you're not even in high school. At 12, you're not even in high school yet. So when you get to high school, you're in 9th grade, I'm assuming. What's your track coach say? He's like, I got this phenom at 12 years old.
I don't know what they said. They just kind of get out of the way. I think I was pretty headstrong and wasn't very coachable.
Really?
So even though I became a coach, I wasn't super coachable as an athlete. I went through coaches like crazy, like M&Ms, and so I think I deal with this. There's what makes athletes great, coaching them, what makes them get extraordinary performances isn't necessarily that they're easy to deal with or easy to coach.
Yeah, right.
Most of the best people are difficult and headstrong and emotional about a lot of things.
Yeah. They're not always the most coachable.
Correct.
But if you can penetrate that, and they see the cause and effect of, hey, when I'm with Coach Hudson, I get this.
Correct.
That's where they start going, all right, they still headstrong, still stubborn, but have a mutual amount of respect that says, hey, you know what? I know that when I'm with this guy or with this girl, I know I get better.
Correct.
So,
Correct. Yeah.
So all right. So now you're in high school. You're setting records in high
Correct.
school.
Yep.
As a runner, what's going on in your mind of saying, hey, this is something that I'm really. At some point, you have to realize I'm really good at this, and maybe there's a future in running for me.
Yeah, I mean, I probably had already assumed that there was a future ahead. If I had stayed healthy, I knew I was going to run in college and continue running. And, the great thing about the sport is that you don't need to be on a team. You can do it anywhere you want. Do it on a treadmill, do it by yourself at 4 a.m., do it at midnight. Whenever you need to do it, you can do it. There's a freedom to it that I think attracted me at first that not a lot of sports have, is that you have the freedom to just go run.
Yeah. So at 17, you decide you're going to leave New Jersey.
Correct.
You're 40 miles outside of New York.
Yep.
Where in New Jersey?
So near in Hunterdon County, Clinton, New Jersey.
Yep.
So near Flemington.
Gotcha. And so you said, all right.
Rural New Jersey.
Yeah. So right. So if I'm gonna make a go at this, then New Jersey's probably not the best environment.
Correct.
Right now. Oregon at the time, and still is really.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place for running. Yep.
You got the altitude, you got the views.
Yeah, Eugene's sea level, but you can get to altitude in Oregon, like 4,500 feet, I think 4,000 feet.
Yeah.
Lake Odell is maybe 35, but yeah, great place for running. Tracktown USA, a lot of runners.
So what is it? So what's that conversation like? The conversation with your parents, the conversation with I know you said your dad had helped you out, but what was hey, I'm going to emancipate myself. I'm going to move from New Jersey to Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Saying you're not like you're moving from New Jersey to New York.
Yeah.
New Jersey to Oregon. And I'm going all in. I'm going all in on this running.
Mm-hmm. So it was a better place for running, and I was into running. I didn't really look at it as a risk or look at it as anything that I couldn't do, because running was huge at the high school I went to. Running was, running wasn't huge in New Jersey. There was good runners, but it wasn't like a huge sport that it is today.
Yeah.
It's gotten bigger in the high schools today, but it wasn't. There was not even a flinch.
Yeah.
I knew it would be okay.
What are your parents saying at this point?
So my mom had passed away in a car accident. I was in a car accident when I was 14, and she had died. And she was into running, and my dad was a longshoreman and liked to drink a lot. He didn't really give a fuck. Excuse me, can I say that?
Yeah,
sorry.
you can.
Okay,
say
sorry.
what you want. Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah,
he didn't care that much.
Yeah, so he's like, I'm emancipating myself.
Yes.
I'm going to make a go at this. I'm moving.
Yep.
And what's it like? So you get to Oregon, and
so it was Oregon in the heyday. It was Athletics West was there. Oregon was University of Oregon was a great track team, and there was Salazar out there training, and so many great athletes. So it was great to see the sport be accepted, I guess.
Yeah.
To be accepted to run a lot.
So you get out there, and you weren't going to school at University of Oregon, right?
I eventually went to Oregon, but I was finishing my last year at high school, so South Eugene High School.
Yeah, perfect. And then, so I read, saw somewhere a story that you sneak into the locker room.
Yeah.
Right?
So how I coached myself was I did have coaches and stuff, but how I coached myself is I used to on Monday they would post the workouts in the locker room at University of Oregon, and it was a pretty open locker room. So I would just do my morning run, and right at the end of my morning run, I'd go in and see what the workouts were for the week. So he'd put everything by event. Like Dellinger, was Steve Prefontaine's coach, Bill Dellinger. Yeah. So he'd put the workouts up like 5K, 10K, middle distance, and so I just look at what they were doing, and that would be my week.
At the age of 17.
Yeah. So I'd already knew. I had a pretty good idea on training at the time.
Yeah. So then, so what happens now? So you're in Oregon. You're literally at this point becoming a master of your craft.
Correct.
You're self-training. You have certainly the right mindset. What's the next evolution? So I know you ran New York. You ran all these marathons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did really well.
Mm-hmm. Won a few marathons. Yeah.
Won some marathons, which is a hard thing to do.
Correct.
Way, right?
The difference, it's easy to run some fast times, but to win a marathon takes a little different.
Yeah, I'm saying I've run 4 marathons. So I ran New York this last year in Chicago, and I did it in 4:20, and you would have thought I won a gold medal. And then you get the book like 6 months later of like the finishers. Mm-hmm. There were 56,000 people that ran the New York City, 55,000 people that ran the New York City Marathon in 2018. I finished 29,000. So I'm like, so if you think about it, like I thought I was like the king because I made the time I want to make, but there were 29,000 people that finished in front of me. So to finish one out of 56,000 is.
I never won New York though.
Oh yeah. So, but any of those marathons.
It's very, very difficult. Yes.
It's not an easy task.
No, it is not.
Right. So now what's the tell me about your career and how does it evolve from becoming a runner to now becoming something that you were not super engaged in having yourself. So you weren't coach. You weren't super engaged in having a coach, but now all of a sudden you become the coach. You want to become the coach. Yeah.
So towards the end of my career, and not that I was super frustrated with my running, but I didn't reach where I wanted to. I really wanted to win a gold medal, and it's not for everyone. Not everyone's going to win the gold medal, and I wanted to be on the Olympic team and have much more success. And so near the end of my running career is when it really, I think, started to make me a coach, when I was going through the difficulties of my body breaking down and not improving and trying to find ways to eke more out of my body when I was 31, 32. And so that was a really good even though it was a frustrating time as an athlete, it really defined me as a coach because I saw that it wasn't coming easy for me. It was, when I was younger, it came a little bit easier for me. When something comes easy, I think you don't learn as much. You don't, you're not learning your craft as much, and you don't become better. And so, as I was suffering and falling apart as an athlete, I was getting stronger as maybe a coach, and seeing a lot of different ways of doing things, and trying to find a better way to do things.
Yeah, that's so good, because I think there's so much in what you just said. The idea that when things come easy to you, you tend to take them for granted and think that this is I'm born natural. This is
and you're not observant to it, and you think it's you think it's there's not much to why you got there. Yeah.
And so, which rejects any idea. If it comes natural to me, I reject any idea that I need to invest in having somebody help me become better at it.
Correct, and it's also the reason why a lot of very, very good athletes aren't great coaches, because it comes so easy, and they can't understand why it doesn't come as easy to other people.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I'm with you on that. So who's the first person that you started to coach? Like, do you remember that first person that hired you as a coach? And what that conversation was like?
So the first person I started to coach I started to advise an athlete, a steeplechaser. And I was working at a running store, and they just had asked my advice on training. I had a lot of knowledge, and I was advising a couple athletes, guys, just local guys. But I just remember thinking, I always knew I wanted to coach. I didn't see it as anything weird that I would become a coach. Yeah. I kind of thought I would, if that makes sense. I was always studying the sport, studying the methodology, asking a lot of questions to people that were successful, and so I knew that it was the direction I wanted to go.
Yeah. So think about that. How many years ago was that? That first person running?
So that would have been early 2000, 2002, 2003.
So now 15 years later.
Yeah.
15 years later, you're coaching some of the world's best runners.
Correct.
Ali Kiefer, who's on the show, she is, as far as female runners in the United States, she's right up there. Right?
Correct.
She's up there with Flanagan and some of these other well-known people, and she's still got a pretty good future ahead of her.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So in that 15 years, how have you changed as a coach? From that very first coaching person to the coach that you are now, what's the difference?
I think, when I first started coaching, I thought I was probably better than I was. I think most people that get into something, the first thing you have to do is just to do it and assume that you can do it, have the confidence to do it. But I've learned tons more of the mental side, and really it's what I've learned once I knew everything kind of thing. Yeah. Once I realized once you know everything, it's what you learn on top of that you really become better. And it's just the experience of it, the mind frame of it, getting way outside the methodology, just coaching the whole person and bringing things in. Like there's a book in front of me here, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, who wrote this book in a concentration camp. And just bring in things, you realize that everything in life, you can bring in things you read and things that have nothing to do with running into helping athletes. Yeah,
so you talked about it a little bit, and you led me right into this next question, which is, what do you think is easier to coach? Is it the tactical, or is it the mindset?
So I think it depends on the athlete. I think that it's not that simple. There's some athletes you have a hard time teaching the tactical and stuff, but the mind is, the best athletes have something in them, an extra spark, a flago, something that I've coached tons of talented athletes that didn't have that, and they didn't reach the top. All the best ones have something that separates them, an angst. And I think in America it's a little different. Throughout the world, the Ethiopians and Kenyans are the best distance runners in the world. But in the Western side, or at least in America, what I see, the best athletes, men and women that are great, everything in our society is to take away pain. Yeah. You turn on the TV and it's ibuprofen or Excedrin, or take this to feel better, take this to St. John's wort to feel better, to have more energy. And so everything in American society is to not be uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And
right.
running, distance running, marathon running, and racing is about being uncomfortable for long periods of time and dealing with it. So I think that it's not super normal in our society to want to do that. And I think the people that do that and are good at it in America are a little bit, have some sort of angst or chip on their shoulder or something that separates them.
Someone driving.
Yeah, I mean, there are talented athletes that don't all have that, but most, I think in America that want to suffer like that have something.
Yeah, I love that. That's so
Yeah.
true. It's we will go to extreme lengths to stay inside of our comfort zone.
Correct.
I think we
Yeah,
will-
yeah. We don't want to. I mean, I have to tell myself every day sometimes to get out of my comfort zone as a coach, and see also just to see where the athletes are coming from, that what makes them tick, and what makes U.S. athletes, at least in my opinion, tick. The mental side is that yes, they're motivated to train, but also they have something that's driving them that's a little bit different than most.
Yeah. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the, if you want to get inside the head of an athlete, right? So you see the form. Seeing a form is one thing. I remember Bill Walsh in one of his books was telling a story about Joe Montana.
Yep.
And said that he was at practice one day, and Joe had thrown a pass, and he threw it to Jerry Rice or John Taylor, one of those receivers, and they reached out their arms, and the ball dropped in like a bread basket, just dropped in his hands. And the quarterback coach on the sideline went crazy. This is beautiful. It was a beautiful out pass. And Bill Walsh pulled him aside and said, "Don't ever compliment him on that again." And he said, "Why?" He said, "Because that pass is supposed to be 6 inches from his chest, and that pass was 12 inches from his chest. And there's no receiver, no defender there." He's telling a story about how the great coaches can see the small technical things, details that other people can't see, and that's what we coach. We coach the details.
Correct.
When you're coaching somebody on a run, is that what you're looking for? Are you looking for those details, or are you just looking at the result?
So, I mean, there's a couple sides to it. So I'm looking at the details and them mentally going through it, the things they do as they go through it. But I'm not, I wouldn't say that I don't critique every stride they take or, their form. We are doing some things to work on form and work on things like that. But I do see some of those things when they're successful and maybe they didn't do it right.
Yeah.
I do see that.
Perfect. Okay, so that's the technique part. How do you apply that same methodology to the mindset? So, can you look at a runner or talk to a runner? Take Allie, for example. Can you know when Allie mentally isn't there, and how do you coach that person through that?
So it's a fine line. I think knowing when you always have a little bit more inside your mind than you think you do. And so it's a fine line when you feel like they need to be pushed and when they don't need to be pushed. And that's the art of getting to know someone, knowing when you think they need a rest and knowing when they don't.
Yeah.
And when I first got into coaching, Mark Wetmore, who was a very successful University of Colorado coach, said to me, coaching women, it's like coaching 5 guys. And he said that women were much more difficult, which I don't believe. I think that all the elite athletes, men or women, it just depends on who you're coaching, are not easy to coach.
Yeah.
Can be very difficult.
So what is the when you're looking for an athlete, when you're thinking about coaching an athlete, or an athlete calls you, somebody wants to join Hudson Elite,
Mm-hmm.
what are you looking for in that athlete? What are you looking for in somebody to say, all right, I'm gonna, because at this point in your career, it's not, I'll just take anyone. It's, I have to want to coach you, and it's got to be mutually beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
What are you looking for in that athlete?
So, I personally want athletes that are willing to be all in and do everything they can to be great, that want to be great. And, you see it at every level, even at the top level. Not everyone wants to be the best, okay? Or at least, and when I say the best, I don't mean necessarily they can be the best runner in the world, but get the best out of themselves. And so I guess I'm attracted to athletes that want to be great, to get the most out of themselves, to make every every day make themselves the best version of themselves.
So what do you think stops the average human being? What do you think stops those people? What's, in just your experience, what stops those people from wanting to be the best they can be?
So the mind is hugely important in distance running, and the people at the top, the difference is the mind between, the top 100 athletes. The mind is huge, and how their perseverance in the little things. You see the best athletes are able to get through small little things, small problems that become big problems for other athletes. Yeah. But something that people don't like to talk about is there is a difference in talent. Okay, to be a great athlete, whether you're a basketball player or a football player, or your parents had to have given you some genetics. Now you can take, maybe B- genetics to an A level if you're Bill Bradley and you practice basketball 4 hours a day all through high school every day and 8 hours on Saturday, and you can take maybe lesser genetics to a higher level, but you have to have been giving something to be a good distance runner. Yeah. Something from your parents in running and in all sports you're going to be good at. So what about the non-elite athletes? What about
so the non-elites, the Chad Sanchkin who just wants to become a better runner? What stops
life? What stops them? Yeah. Other things in life, other things to do, relationships, a job, not being motivated to do it. I coach both elites, and I coach some regular people online, athletes that I coach. And the biggest difference between the online and elites is the elites, nothing gets in the way of their training. Okay, not a relationship, not their cousins visiting their cousins, or a holiday, or anything. Their training is their priority and their number one thing, and they work their life around their training. Whereas I feel like the average person, I see it all the time, is they set these goals and they train for a marathon, and then they get sick and they have to work, and then things get in the way and they lose some interest in it, and sometimes don't do it because there's a lot more to life than just running. Yeah. But for the runner, there's just running.
There's just running.
For the elite athlete that wants to be great, that wants to make the Olympic team, there's just running. And it's a sad thing to say. There was a movie a few years ago about a jazz drummer. It's called, what was it called? Do you remember it? Famous movie, Whiplash.
Oh, Whiplash, yeah. Great movie.
Yeah.
Great movie.
That if you want to understand what it's like to be a distance runner, or be anything where it's your priority, that movie pretty much sums it up. And there was people that saw that movie and were like, don't you see, like, you have to have some perspective and balance in the sport. No, you don't. Yeah. Because to be great at anything, no matter what it is, and I'm sure obsessed. It's business or running a pizza place, whatever it is, it has to come first and be number one.
Become obsessed with it.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying you can't have a balance with your family and all that kind of stuff, but nothing gets in the way of what your dream or goal is. And the same in coaching.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so I found, so when I first started running, the conditions had to be perfect. The conditions, like, it had to be 70 degrees and sunny. And I hate running. You live in
California? Where do you live?
Yeah, I live in Maryland, right? So
okay.
It doesn't happen, right? So if it rained, it's raining, can't run today. Yeah. And the biggest switch was I realized that if I only run when the circumstances are good, I don't get any better. So when I really get better now, so I look for the worst circumstances, when it's the worst conditions. If it's snowing, I'm running. If it's raining, I'm running. If it's, I've never run on a treadmill, never ran 1 mile on a treadmill. so it's all outside. So I'm looking for the worst conditions. And it seems like once I had that switch, like I run, and when I go run, I run at 4:30 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, there's nobody there. And I'm thinking,
that's awesome.
I'm beating all these people. Yeah.
And it's, it brings me back to growing up. Peter Snell was an Olympic gold medalist in the 800, 1500 in 64, won the 860. And his coach said that whenever the conditions were worse, he would train the hardest because he knew other athletes weren't doing it.
That's me.
And I think that's a little bit of a runner's mind frame, and the ones that want to be great is that when it's shitty out and it's windy and there's a little extra motivation sometimes for people because they realize that other people may not be doing it, or it just psychs them up to know that not everyone is out there in that situation.
Yeah, anyway, it's easier to be great when the conditions are in your favor.
Correct.
It's hard to be great when the conditions are against you.
And that's life. That's a lot of life. Is dealing with most of life is tough and failure and tedious. It's dealing with that.
It's learning how to deal with it. Yeah, it was crazy. So I adopted this mindset, and then I ran Chicago this year, and sure enough, it was pouring rain at the start, and I'm like, this doesn't bother me. I've been running for the last year. Every time it rains, I run. So whether people were like huddled up and wearing trash bags, and I was like, no, this is my new normal.
It's great.
Yeah. So what's the signs? So we talked about athletes. What's if you were to you have a book out, which we'll talk about. It's a training book, the little black book redo training manual.
Black book redo. Yep.
And we'll talk about that. But if you were to write a book on coaching and leadership, what do you think are the Coach Hudson 3 must-haves, like to be a great coach, a great leader? What do you think those are?
So I think the first and foremost, and this goes back thousands of years to Alexander the Great, is to, I think, lead by example. So I think the first thing is to show the athletes that you're just, and I see this with athletes like coaches, to show that you're just as committed to doing this as them.
Oh, yeah.
What I'm willing to sacrifice, what I'm willing to do to help my athletes get a workout in.
Oh yeah, Alexander the Great. He
was like the first one over the.
His people would tell him, "Listen, get back."
He almost died. Got shot with an arrow because he was like the third person through.
So he's the leader, but he's leading it out in front every time. Great.
Yep. And so I think that how that's not inspiring, I don't know.
Yeah.
Secondly, I think. Showing that you care, I think, is hugely important. That you actually care about them as people and care about their performance.
Yeah, I think
that it's not just a job.
Yeah, I think you just said it. You say care about them as a human being.
Yep.
Right.
And both care about them as a human being. No matter whether they do bad or do great, that there's an empathy towards them. But also, you do care about their performance, how they do.
Oh yeah.
As much as they do.
Yeah. Perfect. All right, that's two. What's the third?
Yeah, and so then lastly, I would say is trust. Okay, that they trust you. They know that one of the things as a coach is I try to. There's coaches that play games with athletes and maybe lead them a little bit. I'll do this a little bit. I don't lie to my athletes. But I may lead them a tiny bit with a carrot, like a little, maybe tell them they're a little better shape than they are at times, because I think it can lead to better performances. But I truly try to shoot straight with them. Is I feel like if you're going to have a long-term relationship with them and they're going to trust you, the things you say and workouts and things, is that you don't BS them.
Yeah. Is
that you tell them what you feel and don't lie.
Yeah, there's a great book by a lady named Kim Scott called Radical Candor. And Radical Candor is a leadership book, and it said the best coaches deliver radical candor, which is they've been able to show that I care personally about you, so I'm going to challenge you directly. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to tell you exactly how it is, but I can only do that when I've already proven to you that I care personally about you.
Correct.
And if I care personally about you, then I can give you the truth.
Yeah, that's huge. And knowing that when you do tell them that they can run a certain performance, that it's the truth. Yeah. It doesn't mean every time they're going to hit that performance, but it means that you're basing it on what you see.
Yeah. So what's the next level for you? And when I say next level, you have athletes right now that are competing to get into the Olympics. They'll be competing in Atlanta. You have athletes that are, I don't know if you say on the circuit, but they're run the
professional athletes.
Professional athletes run the worlds, run these. And you're growing Hudson Elite. So what is Hudson Elite? For those that don't know, I follow it on Instagram. It's super motivating.
Hudson Elite was a group I had in Boulder, and now I've kind of separated myself from it a little bit. Is that I need sea level in my training, and so one of the things I want to bring into the athletes that can train at sea level. I want athletes that can use both altitude and sea level in their training. I feel like for Western athletes, there's the Kenyans have lived their whole lives at altitude. And if they race at altitude at 6,000 feet, and then they race at sea level, there's not a huge difference in the percentage that they race at because their aerobic systems are so highly developed. And so with the athletes that I coach, I feel like Americans, I feel like altitude is good for raising their engine, makes them a lot fitter, but they also need to have some sea level in because most weren't born and raised at altitude.
So if I were to go to Denver, if I were to go to Boulder, and I were to train, when I say train, just do my normal training that I'm doing now for 6 months, 5 months, and then I came back and I ran New York, which is close to sea level. Do you see a big difference? Do you think?
Yeah.
Or is it, are you talking?
So there's no magic. So I'll say this. So altitude can help you develop a little quicker, provided that you are training properly at altitude. Okay. So you see a lot of people come up to altitude and they just train like they did at sea level, and maybe they're not hitting the times they hit at sea level, or they're fatiguing, or maybe they're everything's slowed down because they're at altitude and they're struggling. Everyone's a little different how they adapt to altitude. So I think first and foremost, your training has to be targeted towards getting better as a runner. And so there are tons of people that go to altitude and don't become better athletes. They just get fatigued and run a little slower. So you need to keep in mind that you are training for a sea level event, and it's about your goal pace, and it's about the pace at sea level, not altitude.
For those that are listening that are runners, what is the novice runner, the weekend warrior, the bucket list marathoner? What are the 3 biggest things they can work on to get stronger, better, faster?
So there are a couple things I really believe. So one of the things I would tell them to is to modulate or change the pitch or the intensity of their training. So you see a lot of people that run 4 or 5 times a week and they don't do necessarily a lot of workouts. All their training's the same. They go out and run the same pace every day. Might be 7:45 pace every Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday. Everything's the same. If you watch how the best athletes in the world train, the Kipchoge or even elite athletes in America, there's a huge difference in their intensity of their training. There's some very, very easy runs. There might be 7 to 8 minute per mile pace that's just recovery runs. And then there's some runs that are 4:30 a mile or 4:45. So I would tell the average person, there's not tons of secrets, but one of the secrets is that would change their intensity. Try to have a purpose to each run, what they're doing. Sometimes it's just a recovery run. Sometimes it's a run to make themselves better, and just decide what they're trying to, the purpose of each run is, what it is. Secondly, I would say there's things you can do. So when they test athletes, the big thing that they do with science is they test athletes in a lab with VO2, their oxygen uptake, what they feel like they're capable of doing based on their aerobic system. But a thing missing is how athletes move, how they move. And so ground contact, things you can do like light drills or hill sprints that we do, there's not tons of secrets in the sport. The one thing I would tell you, that if there is a secret, it's doing alactic or CP work, CP system work, and that is just sprint work. So in almost every sport, the ability to move well or move quick is super important, and it's no different in running. If you can change your ground contact by 1/1000th of a milliliter, millisecond, or whatever it is, you become a better athlete.
Really?
And that transfers into everything.
Awesome. All right, third, and the third?
Third is lifestyle. So people say that, I mean, like everything in life is nothing's 8 hours, okay? It's your whole being and your whole body. Same in medicine now. They're finding there's no just, hey, put your work in. It's how you are mentally. It's how you are physically, your energy level. It's if you can do it for long periods of time. So it's your diet. How good is your diet? Are you eating great nutrients? Are you eating amounts that are correct, carb ratio, fat ratio? And your lifestyle, are you recovering from what you're training? Okay, are you sleeping well? Running is 24/7, like most things. I think to be great in anything is that you have to look at your whole being and your whole body. And same in being a coach. It's not just an hour with me. It's things I do to make myself healthier so that I can be a better coach when it's time to be a better coach. And that's exercise, that's mental training, that's meditation, whatever it is.
That's awesome. Okay, a couple more questions, I'll let you go. But so I'm running Berlin this year.
End of September.
End of September, really excited.
I should have a Canadian trying to make the Olympic team.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Berlin, and there's talk that this year will be the year that somebody breaks the 2-hour mark at Berlin.
Incorrect.
You don't think that'll happen?
No, not happening this year.
So when will it happen? Will it happen?
So it will happen. Kipchoge's 90 seconds away, and I think others are getting closer. It's going to happen. I don't see it. I see this last 90 seconds taking some time. It will happen, especially if you see, things in the sport are getting better that are helping this. Now, it's not completely that, but shoes are getting better, more economical, like shoes like the Nike Vaporfly and other companies are starting to make plates in the shoes to help ground contact, what I was talking about earlier. Yeah. So footwear and equipment is getting better. Secondly, training methodology is getting better, more scientific, more specific to the events of what they're doing. The marathon changed when people started to do faster long runs, more specific. In the 25 years ago, no one did fast long runs, and everyone ran 2:10 or 2:11 in the marathon. Now people are training much more specifically. There's better footwear, and there's better fuel. Companies are investing in the science of fuel and taking in more carbohydrates when they're running, more hydration when they're running. Companies like Motrin, which is a little bit a step ahead of a lot of Sword and Motrin, are very similar products that hopefully help you get more carbohydrates so you can go a little further at a quicker speed.
So Roger Bannister broke the
54? When was it?
Yeah, 1954.
Yeah.
Broke the
May.
5-minute mark. Right?
Yeah, 4-minute mile.
4-minute mile. Sorry,
Yeah.
4-minute mile.
Yeah.
And doctor said his heart was going to explode, never going to
Yeah.
be done. People have
Yeah.
been trying, he's going to die,
Yeah.
literally die.
Yeah.
He breaks it, and then shortly thereafter, it becomes a.
Then everyone breaks it.
Everybody breaks it,
everyone
right?
sees that it's possible. Yeah, it was a huge mental barrier for sure, and
Same thing happened here. You think he breaks it, and then or somebody breaks it, and then in 5 years we're talking about how
others will. Yeah, for sure.
The new record is.
Yeah,
how is that
I mean,
possible?
if you had when I got into marathon running, when I ran the Gettysburg Marathon, I think only a couple people had ever really broken 2:10 in the marathon. There's very, very few. There was Derek Clayton, who some say was a short course when he broke the world record, and then there was a British guy, Ron Hill, and then there was Bill Rogers, who ran on a tailwind, and Frank Schroeder ran 2:10 area. So not tons of people were running under 5 minutes per mile in the marathon. Now they're running close to 4:40 in the marathon. So the mental part's huge, and the commitment, the professionalism to the sport. There wasn't the same professionalism. Running was something, back in the 50s and 60s when Bannister did break 4 minutes in a mile. There wasn't the internet. There wasn't all this other stuff, 50 channels on TV. There was less entertainment for people. So the running became the entertainment, and now it's become more of a profession.
Yeah, and do you see that people are really, they are like, maybe it's me because I'm now running and I've never run before, so I'm more aware of it. Mm-hmm. But is running on the rise? Is running as a sport, is that really on the rise with everyday Americans in the sense of, I see more people running marathons. The marathon entries the last 3 years in New York have gone up, and you see these people, these weekend warriors or whatever, entering the marathon. Has it become more socially?
Yeah, so running is healthiest that it's ever been, and I think and that doesn't mean the professional end, even though in the U.S. the athletes are doing very well, especially our women are amazing. But it's more that I think that we need it to our lifestyle. So more people are running than ever before, and I think it has to do with, our portions are huge. There's, we're more sedentary, so running will always have a place. And I think it's a sport where you can put maybe the least amount of time for what you get out of it. Yeah. For what the calories you burn. And I think as we become even more sedentary and we're driving and flying everywhere and not moving as much, running will have a huge part in that. It's healthy. If you look at the business end of the sport, it's doing amazing. People are begging to get into these races because it's the motivation that keeps them going.
It's unbelievable. I'm trying to run the world.
Yeah.
I'm not going to qualify. I don't imagine I'm going to qualify
Yeah.
for any of them. Hopefully, my goal will one day to be qualified for Boston, but as I get older, it gets harder, even though the times get more.
Yep.
And millions of dollars are being raised for charity on every one of these runs, just because people want to.
Yeah. It's a great thing. They're doing great things for themselves as far as fitness wise and goals and motivation to people, and B, they're raising tons of money for charities. And I mean, the sport is super healthy on the business end, super healthy. I in particular really like the professional end of the sport. I want to see that to continue and to grow, and I do think it's valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so couple last two questions. So you wrote a book. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about the book.
So I have 3 books. The first book I wrote is called Run Faster, and that was by Broadway Books, and that's out. You can order that at Barnes & Noble and stuff, and that's a training book geared towards up to elite level athletes, but really geared towards the average runner, training methodology, and it gives my philosophy that I still use today. And then I have a kids running book, The Young Runner, which is just advice for kids, maybe some of the pitfalls and some of the positive things of running. You can, as you move forward from a kid to an adult as a runner. And then lastly, the book that I really have a passion about is called The Black Book Redo. And that's a book, I charge $75 for it. It's quite expensive, but there's really not a book in the world like it. It's a training methodology book, and it's maybe all the workouts I've seen through my whole life, and it's all non-watered. So most running books are a little bit watered down for people so that the average runner can handle it. But this Black Book Redo is zero. There's no compromise. It's the real workouts that the best athletes in the world are doing.
Really? And you don't mind sharing that with everybody?
No, I don't. So,
so most people like to keep
some people like to
keep their secrets.
Yeah, I'm pretty transparent. I think there's not tons of secrets in the sport, and I've been blessed that a lot of people have shared, particularly coaches throughout my running career and mentors have shared a lot of wisdom with me, and I have no problem sharing it with other people.
Awesome. All right. Well, where do people find you? So
go to blackbookredo.com, but be forewarned, it's not for everyone. This is a very serious book, and should come with a little bit of a warning that not everyone can do this.
Where if people wanted to follow you, they follow you on Facebook and Instagram?
Yeah, so Coach _Hudson on Instagram.
Coach Hudson. I'm telling you, if you don't have to be an elite runner to be motivated by your pages. I'm telling you, by your Instagram.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of people do say that they weren't going to go out for a run, and then they see some of the stuff I posted.
Oh yeah, I saw it the other day. I was like, I don't know what you posted, but you somebody running, and it was. You had a picture of a sunset, and I'm like, all right, I guess I got to get up and go run now, right?
Well, I'm glad I'm having some of the positive effects because I do like that.
Awesome. All right, last question. So, when you have left this earth, when you're long gone, what do you want your contribution to have been to this world?
That I made the sport of running a little better.
That's awesome.
That's it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Check this guy out because he's the real deal. Coach Brad Hudson, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, appreciate it.